Hi, I'm Gary and welcome to my shop. In this video I wanted to do one on shop safety. I had an explosion right next door to me here. It was because of incorrect storage and use of some explosive materials. So it didn't happen in my shop and it didn't do any damage on my side of the shop here, but it did result in some very serious injuries to the person next door. So I'm going to cover just some basics here, maybe a few extras, to be aware of and things to consider. We need to be safe. Now, through the course of this video, you're probably going to see me on different shirts and stuff, and that's because I made this video over the course of a few weeks. As you can see here, this garage where the event occurred, the explosion occurred, is right next to me. Here's my list of notes that I made in regards to shop safety. I'll put this up as a PDF document on my website also. Now, this video is not an all-inclusive. It's depends on your shop. Every shop's needs varies. So depending on your shop and the materials you're using, any combustibles, you need to practice good safety for that. In this video I'm going to cover these topics: eye, hearing, and lung protection, jigs and push sticks to keep your fingers and your hands safe, first aid, fire protection, electrical loads, smoke detectors, emergency exits, safe fastening to structures and supports. I'll give a link in the description below to my website where there's more information available to help you. Okay, some of the most basic protections and safety that we think of is like eye protection. I've got glasses on myself, however they're not really rated for safety, so then I would have to put on some safety glasses that do fit over my prescription glasses. For those of you who don't wear prescription, or if you can get the safety glasses with the bifocals in them that will help you to see better, that's a good alternative. You can also get prescription glasses that are safety rated. Another option is a face shield that protect you. This is really especially handy for lathe work, because when you're turning materials on a lathe, it's not always a real stable material. There can be voids and defects in that, and sometimes it's like you got something spinning at 3,000 RPM on your lathe and it can suddenly explode, and that can go right through your eye, right through parts of your face, through your throat, through your nose, through your skull, whatever. A face shield really helps to protect you in that respect. Yeah, so another one that I have that works well for hearing and eye protection, it's called ear muffs, or eye muffs, I'm sorry, if you can see that. You can Google those and find them online. I think they're out of Australia. They're fairly expensive, but you're getting a couple of things for protection, plus you can get replacement lenses here, which I've bought some of. They fit over my ears, and then that folds down. I can pull that back, and it fits over my prescription lenses and gives me hearing and eye protection. Doesn't give me a face shield for like working with a lathe, but it gives me hearing and eye protection for other purposes. Great idea, I think. A bit pricey, and they come in different colors besides green. I think black and blue and red, and I can't remember, white I think also. So a lot of good options here for safety. The third most common item for safety is dust protection for our lungs, to keep from breathing in toxic materials. The thing is with wood dust is a carcinogenic, so if you're exposed to it over a long enough period of time, you're going to get lung cancer. This is a mask that I've used. It's a general purpose mask. I got it from Woodcraft. I'm going to do another video sometime in the future about how I adapted a deflector on here so I can use it with my face shield without fogging up my face shield. Because even though you have a face shield on, you're still going to want some dust protection. So those are the basics for eye protection, dust protection. Also, a couple of options for like hearing protection. You got some of these little styrofoam things you can stick in your ears. That'll give you some hearing protection. Another one that I found through another company, I'll have to put the link on somewhere. It's called SensGuard, if you can see that or not. And the nice thing about this is it really folds up compactly, so you can just hang it on the shelf or put it on somewhere. And then it unfolds and really provides great hearing protection, but at the same time you can hear people's voices. So I really like this one. There's nothing really more important than your eyes and your lungs and your ears, you know, to protect that stuff. Then also, as I'm going to talk further in this video about other kinds of safety in the shop. Okay, in this part I'm going to talk to you about various push sticks that you can use on your table saws and other tools. There's quite a variety of things you can use, including all these shop-made ones. Got this shop-made block ready to go, and it's easy to take your workpiece that you're pushing through here to cut, put this on there, and it hooks on. Okay, to make this push block, I took a piece of 2x4 here. I measured it out about 7 inches. That's big enough for my hand to hold on to it, and cut the piece free. And what I did is laid out some lines on this where I'm going to make some notches on both sides here. Then I'll cut this out on the bandsaw, and that'll give me a push stick with feet that drop down for pushing work through. Okay, so here at the bandsaw I will cut into this piece up to the depth of the line here, and then for the other side, and then I will cut the length of this up to that notch. Now, as you'll see, I've got this cut where it's got this notch down here that'll catch the back of the board to push it through the saw. And same with this one on the other edge. So you wear out one side, flip it over, and use the other side. Okay, so now I've got this shop-made block ready to go. And it's easy to take your workpiece that you're pushing through here to cut, put this on there, and it hooks on. Some people might want to make this notch a little bit deeper. Depends on your preference, but I probably wouldn't go any more than a 1/2 inch. This is maybe about 1/4 inch at the most. And just hooks on, pushes your workpiece through safely. A lot of times we set our blades to, should be just barely above the workpiece. So if you're cutting pieces in the middle here, you can cut through this block. It's a sacrificial piece. It's a piece of 2x4, and use it up, get several cuts, flip it over, use the other side, then cut off another piece of 2x4 and make another one. Very cheap and very effective push block for on your table saw or some other tools also. Okay, some other push sticks and safety gear we have is, I'm sure you've seen the micro jig. This one works very well. I like it, especially when I'm doing cuts. They're going to be going through the metal here. This keeps a good grip on it. It's got these rubberized feet on it. and it holds pieces kind of over to the fence and pushes along. If you're cutting two pieces, it'll carry both pieces through at the same time. You can see a lot of videos online about these micro jigs. These are great. Very basic push stick that came with this table saw is one of these. Works very well. Doesn't give you a lot of control because things can kind of, shift or whatever, so it doesn't really hold it in place against the fence well. But it's good for, once you get up to a certain point here, pushing it on through and completing your cut. Another one is this one from Craig, which has a few functions to it. It's got this ruler here you can pop out and use. There's a lock on the back side, got to release the lock. Then you can move the ruler out, and you can kind of use this for setting the depth of your blades. But this, it's like the wood block. It sits on top here. It's not as wide, and this is not one you're going to be sacrificial in cutting through because it's fairly thin. But it holds down and pushes your work through. Another push stick that I've made that you might have saw me using on the bandsaw. Handy for a lot of different things. I stuck a magnet on the back side of it to make it stick to things. That's pretty much basic as far as push sticks go. And you want to make sure you're using safety, so you're keeping all your digits. You don't want to lose any of your fingers. And be safe. As you may have noticed before, this area here next to my door, kind of the front wall of my shop garage. And what I want to have here is my first aid kit. Right now what I have is this blue physician's care kit. As you can tell, this doesn't stand out very well. I know where it's at, but if someone else has to come in here and rescue me, they're not going to find this kit. It needs to stand out better. So what I did is I ordered in a first aid kit from Home Depot. It's not available at Lowe's or Home Depot stores. Now here's my first aid kit. This is mounted to the wall at the front of my shop, near the door going into the basement. So hopefully this will stand out well enough. Somebody comes in, they can see this and have access to it, should I be unable to help myself. Something to be cautious about is storing your combustibles so that you're not, exposing them to possible explosion. In this case here, this is a heater that I use for heating the shop in cold weather, and got a couple tanks there. The hoses and all this stuff, in typical use of these things, the tanks are going to be sitting close to that heater. But if you take care of this, keep the heater clean, make sure you're not getting a lot of dust and debris in there, you can operate it pretty safely. These are designed to be very safe. I keep some instructions here on how to start up and shut down this propane heater, because from season to season I may forget the steps, so I keep this handy here at the heater so I can refresh my memory with each season. Now I'm back here. These type of heaters, they don't have like an on-off switch of their own. You have to plug the cord in and out each time you want it to go on. So I have it plugged into power strip that will, keep me from overloading any circuits. Then I've got that wired into this switch here that I can turn the power on and off. Because if I get a situation here where something's going awry, I don't want to have to reach way back in the back there to try and unplug the heater. I'm going to switch it off here. I've got this wired up according to electrical code, so it's absolutely safe also. Also in this area here, I'll be careful and safe that I don't store any other combustibles in this area. Located kind of centrally in my shop, I have my fire extinguisher, and I have the fire extinguisher sign to identify it, so people can find it quickly and easily should they need to. This is the doorway going into my basement from my shop / garage. And here I put a sign on the door because right inside the door there I have a fire extinguisher. So I want people to be able to be aware and see this should I be incapacitated or something was to happen. Right inside the door going out to my garage, my shop, got the fire extinguisher and a sign to identify it. And I always have these charged so they're ready to go. I'm always checking them at least once a month. In most shops we're working with 15 amp circuits. It's our home garage and usually don't have much more than 15 amp circuits. Some people are lucky and they may have a 20 amp circuit. And some of us may be lucky whereas we have more than one circuit in our garage. So be mindful of which circuits are where and which outlets are into different circuits. Balancing, what tools you have into these different circuits. For electrical supply, I'm always keeping things on power outlet strips, these 15 amp that limit my consumption. So if you get too many things going, it'll trip this, supposedly before my circuit breakers. Most of our circuits use circuit breakers. Some older homes may use the old glass fuses. If you can upgrade to a circuit breaker box, that'll be an advantage. So you want to be aware of what tools you're using on what circuit. Now I know my table saw draws the most. At 120 volts, it's drawing 13 amps. Now that fits within my circuit breaker's limits. I want to make sure if I'm going to run that, I turn other things off. I may want to make sure I've got the air compressor off. Don't want to be tripping circuit breakers a lot because that's real inconvenient for you to be running back and forth all the time to reset that circuit breaker. Also, the circuit breakers do kind of have a cycle life. You trip it so many times and you're going to have to wind up replacing that circuit breaker. If you have some major power hungry tools, like if you have some bigger equipment that requires more amperages than 15, 15 amps is kind of a basic guideline. Something wants to draw 15 amps, I'd probably want to put it on a bigger circuit than just 15 amps. That's really pushing the limits there. If you have a light bulb on, that might trip it. I know there's some things I would like to do where I need a 20 amp circuit. If I wanted to run a small shop welder for just dinking around with it, I'm going to need a larger circuit for that. But that's expensive, but it has to be done by code. So with your electrical loads, you want to be mindful of what you're doing and be safe. You don't want to have any power surges or, overdrawing the limits of your electrical wires. So one of the things to consider is that if you're running a tool off to a distance, and you're using an extension cord, maybe more than 50 feet, if you're going up to 100 feet, you're going to want to go with a more heavy-duty extension cord. A lot of extension cords we use are 14 gauge. But when you're stepping out like that, even though you're not using a power tool that's sucking up more, you want to use a 12 gauge extension cord because that'll carry the current better. When you have a small gauge extension cord, your motor is trying to pull all that current through that long wire and you can burn out your motor. Also, drawn current like that can heat up the wiring in the extension cord, and if it gets hot enough, it's going to melt the insulation. Then you're going to have a short and sparks and possibly a fire. So you don't want to ruin your tools, you don't want to ruin your extension cords. Just use things that are heavy duty enough. If you're going more than 50 feet, get a 12 gauge cord. It's going to be well worth it and cheaper than buying a new saw. Now additionally, I have a smoke detector in my garage. And I've got one right inside the door there going into the basement where the fire extinguisher is at too. Know where your emergency exits are. On your main garage door, usually you've got a little cord there you can pull in case there's a power failure or something so you can get the door open. But like this event next door with my neighbor, their main garage door was disabled and couldn't be opened. So usually, every garage has a service door. So you want to make sure that that service door is free and clear so that you or anybody else can get through that and in case of an emergency. You don't want to block it by storing tools and materials in the way there. As you can see by the setup of my shop here, I've attached things to the walls. I've attached things kind of all over the place. Attach into like a concrete block. I try to avoid putting screws into any of the mortar lines because these are block walls here are structural walls. I don't want to cause any cracks in the mortar lines. I'd rather go directly into the brick. Now with other kinds of brick that is fascia, kind of like a siding or something more decorative, not really structural, on the outside of the house, I'll drill into the grout lines so I can avoid having to try and match up the color of the red brick again. It's a lot easier to patch up the grout lines, but those are in places where it's not a structural issue. Got things attached all over the place here, a lot of different places. Hanging things in a lot of different places here, kind of like an old-time hardware store where they've got stuff crammed in on just about every nook and cranny. Now there are building codes that define exactly what and how you can do things to structural components. And I'll put a link to a PDF file on my website that gives all the descriptions on that. So you can put things up safely and not having to worry about compromising the structure or any support systems. In this video, I covered eye, hearing, and lung protection, jigs and push sticks to keep your hands safe, first aid, fire protection, electrical loads and smoke detectors, emergency exits to keep your way clear for an escape, and how to safely fasten to structures and supports. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you got some good, useful information out of it that's going to help you. If you enjoyed this and you got something out of it, please give me a like. To see my future videos as I come out with them, please subscribe and you'll be able to see what I have. Thank you.